Hey guys, so we got another podcast here with Reshanna Boswell that was recorded like 2, 3 years ago, and the audio is not good really on either side, so just be aware of that. But I just wanted to release it because it's been, yeah, just release it. So everyone enjoy this podcast with Reshanna.
Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before I get into it with our guest here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Reshanna Boswell on the podcast, coming to us all the way from Illinois, where it might be just a tad bit warmer than it is here. I mean, we both are expecting, some absolute crappy weather in the months to come. So, this might be one of the few times that we actually talk where she's not in a sweater and a hoodie, basically. But hey, that's one of the benefits about living in the Midwest during the winter, though, is that, you can put on those extra 5 to 10 pounds and, just it's sweater weather than, like what, 7 months out of the year. So that's one positive that I'll take out of this. But she's an IFBB pro and she's on here to share about, her health and fitness journey and talk all things health and fitness. So, most importantly, though, she is our current guest, Reshanna. Thank you so much for coming on.
You.
Well, absolutely. Well, I got to get started first of all because I love to torture myself. What is the weather like in Illinois today?
We're at about 50, but we're actually expecting snow tonight, so we shall see. It's coming. Yeah.
Thank you so much because I am so sick of talking to these people from Texas, from Florida, from South Carolina, from Alabama, where they're like, "Oh my God, it's so cold outside. It's 65 degrees and it's like it's 35 here." And I'm just like, "Screw you!" Like I hate like it's like come on. And then they're talking about like, "Oh, it gets to be like 40 degrees here," which is. And I was like, "Come up here when it's negative 20, and then tell me what you really feel about your life." So I'm glad that I have another fellow Midwesterner on who can at least understand when we say cold, we actually mean cold. Like we mean negatives, and we don't mean 32 where it's like, oh, you're gonna go outside and you're gonna have a heart attack. But yeah, but before we get into that, because I mean, I'm like I tell every guest, I'm working on my winter woes podcast, but that's gonna be like a 10-hour long podcast of me just telling the worst winter weather stories that I can imagine. Rashauna, why don't you first of all get us started by giving us your backstory and how you got started working out and how that accumulated into where you're at right now.
Um, I don't know. I guess I've been doing it now for close to 10 years. Wasn't always into fitness. I was kind of the complete opposite, kind of going out, partying the whole bit. And then I don't know. I guess I just got old after a while. I was working in a physical therapy clinic, and one of the guys there, he was actually a personal trainer. Took me through my first workout. Actually, took me through my first bodybuilding like competition just to kind of see it in person. And it's kind of like whoa, and it just I kind of just from there just kind of started. Yeah, but once I kind of it was like kind of leave one addiction for another. Like I always say, like I kind of was doing the opposite and going out and partying way too much, and that was kind of getting out of hand. And bodybuilding and working out in the gym really just hanging out for me. I think really kind of
Did you have any like misconceptions about bodybuilding before you got started that you're like, oh, I don't want this to happen or that to happen, or were you just all in the beginning, or was there any reservations that you had about the sport when you were getting started?
um, well, funny that I'm actually now I've switched over to female bodybuilding. I started out in figure. I did figure my first 2 to 3 years, and then physique, and just this past year switched over to bodybuilding. So initially, it was I didn't want to get too big, and I wanted to stay in figure, and this figure is really popular. Um, my physique became otherwise as I continued to lift and eat, and just you grow. And it's kind of that's just. But initially, it was trying to stay small and not allowing the muscle to grow. I kind of got over that.
Yeah. Which I mean, you've now joined probably like the 50 or so guests that I've had on that say, yeah, I just wanted to start out, I just want to be in either like bikini or figure, but your body, hey, your body has its own
Mhm.
way where it says, like, hey, if you're gonna work me out that much and you're gonna feed me that much, I'm not gonna stay that small. But what was that adjustment like, especially going from figure to physique at first? Because that's a huge jump. I mean, whenever we have guests come on talk about that, I mean that's like 20 pounds of muscle that you really have to put on to do that. But what was that adjustment like for your nutrition and your training when your body just really told you like, hey, we need to move up?
It was just adapting to the dieting and just getting in more food. Really, I did like I said from figure. I did my first physique show was actually the Arnold, and I was actually still small there compared to some of the international girls too. I was like, oh my god. So then my coach was like, no, you need to. I told you. So I'm like, okay, here we go. But just kind of getting used to it, and still the 6 meals a day, but I'm with double the food, the extra carbs. Carbs are not the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
You need them, especially when you're trying to grow.
Yeah.
So. Um, and then just being able to lift more. But I mean, I'm pretty good about putting on, size. I had been, really structurally, I can put on a
Yeah.
decent amount of weight. So, yeah. It's kind of a natural progression, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and one question that I ask every single guest that's on is, if you were to walk into a gym with 100 people, there's 100 different ways as to how those people got into shape, whether it comes down to their diet, their nutrition, how many reps they
Mhm.
do, what exercises they do. I mean, if you were to walk up to someone and say, "Hey, what'd you train for that body part? It looks amazing." What works best for them 99% of the time isn't going to work as good for you. What was that like for you first getting started, sort of figuring out what works best for your body? Because I'm honestly thinking about renaming this podcast to Trial and Error because that's really what this lifestyle entails. But what was that whole journey like, sort of figuring out what worked best for your specific body?
I mean, it is trial and error. It's trial and error. Some exercises help build muscle, certain exercises, and then your body mechanics. And certain exercises, like my shoulders are really tight. So certain exercises I just can't do. That might be, what are the best exercises to build shoulders. So you just find workarounds that work for you, and that's diet. And even like with dieting too. It's I keep carbs in for the most part. I do a higher fat diet. We've learned over the years, it works. And there's been plenty of shows that I've done and I kind of look back on it, I'm like, oh my God, that was a great prep. And you're like, ooh, this prep was not so great. And you kind of think about the different preps and how each prep really is different. Prep is half emotional anyway. So it's like really trying to like zone out and kind of focus on prep and stuff like that too. So yeah, it's all just kind of.
Yeah, no, it's always ever evolving too. That's the one thing that really stinks about this lifestyle is that the moment that you really think that you got everything down pat, your body just says, "Oh, hey, we got too used to it. Now you're not going to see the results." So then you got to, constantly
Exactly.
be, yeah, that's the one thing that I hate the most. I was one of those people where I struggled with those beginner gains as well, where I was like, "Oh my God, everything's going to be like this. It's going to be, down easy street the
Mhm.
rest of my life." And then next thing you know, you're like, "Oh, I only gained like a pound of muscle like the next like 3 months," basically, where you're just like, "Oh, what's going on really?" It's like, "Oh no, your body gets used to it." So yeah,
One
that's
thing with dieting now, like dieting, when the first few years I was competing, I would get lean so much faster. Now it's like, I'm very conscious of my off season weight now because I don't want to kill myself in season trying to get lean again. You learn that over the years. You're like, gaining 30 pounds in off season is not something
yeah.
it's fat. It's not something you want to have to work off
Yes.
come the
Yes.
season. It's too long of a prep for you.
Well,
And I give myself some prep. So
especially when we hear some of these horror stories about these bodybuilders that they put on like 40 pounds after like a week after their show, where it's like, okay, yeah, that's not going to be that great to work that off. But we see it behind you, a treadmill, and cardio is my least favorite thing on this planet. Although I'll be doing it right after I'm done talking to you, just because I have put on like if everyone can see the 5 to 10 pounds of winter weight. It came a little early this year because of COVID, but it's just one thing that I absolutely hate. I mean, I had an ex-girlfriend who was a marathon runner, and every single time, oh hey Ryan, you want to go for a run? Easiest answer in my life, no. Just no. I even told her, I said, the only time you're going to ever catch me running is you got to chase me with a knife. That's like the only time you're ever going to see me, really start to sprint. But what is your relationship with cardio like?
I mean, like everyone else, I guess it's kind of love hate, necessary evil, pretty much. And most of my cardio is done at home. I have to face it, so I have pretty much all the major pieces of cardio. So, um, my treadmill, and my stairmaster are probably the two go tos. But yeah, I do an hour in the morning, typically fasted. I've done up to 3 hours a day getting ready for a show.
Yeah.
It's whatever you have to do to be ready. So.
I have had on some of those mentally unstable track runners, which I call mentally unstable because I don't know why you would ever want to do a sport where it's just running, but hey, and they're like, oh, I love cardio, I enjoy it, and I was like, okay, I have some therapist numbers that I can give to you because if that's something that you would get joy out of, I don't know what's going on up there, but I love to talk genetics on this podcast because so many people in this day and age who everyone's on social media, oh, I want his arms, oh, I want her abs, I want their back. I cannot tell you how many times I hear that. And I'm just like, okay, you can only be the best version of yourself. You don't know how that person got to the way that they look. I mean, let's be honest. Some people are just born lucky. I had a guest on here who showed me a photo when they were like 6 years old and they had a 12 pack. And I was like, okay, this is absolutely BS. Like, this is not fair. But, and, people work so much harder than ours. But yeah, if I could just shake down every person and just be like, you're not going to look like that person because, you just don't have those genetics. But on top of that, I always say whenever someone first gets started working out, they always have that one body part that really, really takes off that they don't have to train as much. And they have that one body part that just drags behind that they have to train to oblivion to get it to catch up to everything else. I'll give you mine first. I mean, my back, just because I had, jobs all throughout college of lifting and loading boxes. And, you either got a really nice back or you quit. But I'm 6'3", so my legs are just shot. Like I told you before, I could inject pure muscle into my legs and they wouldn't grow an ounce. But what were those body parts for you when you were getting started?
Um, Back and shoulders typically, I don't do too much for. I have some very set exercises for. I never train traps. People always stop me. How do you train your traps? No idea. I never trained them. and same thing actually with my quads. My quads have been, I don't know. I don't necessarily go super heavy. I squat a decent amount, but it's nothing spectacular. Like I tell people, like my leg workouts are just nothing to watch. They're not really spectacular. I'm lunging, I'm doing some squats, leg press. It's fairly simple. It's not complicated at all. But the quads are pretty spot on. So
Yep, that's just again proving to me that the world is not fair, everyone. So, hey, if I could, yeah, I mean, I tried a time under tension leg workout one time, and literally the next morning I got 3 steps out of my bed and I just passed out, basically. So it's always evolving for me. But yeah, that's why I love asking that question, because everyone's answers are different from one another's. But we talked a little bit about nutrition, but that is one thing that is vastly understated when it comes to just this lifestyle, because that's 80 to 90% of the results. The saying always goes, abs are made in the kitchen, which is absolutely true. I mean, I've had people on here that have never even done a crunch in their lives, and they have a six-pack just because they have the right amount of nutrition and they work out other areas. But what does your nutrition look like for you, and how has it evolved? Especially because, like you said, going from figure to physique to then bodybuilding. I mean, that's an ever-evolving nutrition process.
um, it's I don't like I guess now I'm there's a lot of food. There's just quite a bit of food in bodybuilding and carbs at most meals, and from figure where I pretty much would run a keto or prep. Like we ran keto, it's pretty definitely running on under 1,000 calories at times, and still banging out hours of cardio. Um, and I guess over the years, my body's adjusted as I've gotten older, and I've started to know what foods work for me, and getting the right foods in. I haven't killed myself with as much cardio. I'm still getting some carbs in and getting to stay full, which is another thing switching over to bodybuilding too. I used to be like, tiny, when tiny, like, but now it's like you could be full, your muscles can be full. So it's a different, for me, that's still wrapping my mind around that. Even like the weight, being lean, with a 6-pack or 8-pack, for me at 165 pounds on stage, which is what I was roughly at this last show. Whereas in physique, 165, 170 was my off-season weight.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, I can be this weight and still have the smaller waist. So it's very interesting how this is, like with my coaches and stuff, like, you gotta wrap your mind around this now. This is okay.
So you're literally only like 3 pounds heavier in your off season?
I'm rough. Well, my last year one from women's physique, my off season weight was usually right around 170, 175.
Oh.
I'll probably now, as I'm going into bodybuilding now, because I'm sitting now at about 165, 168 right now, with 4 weeks out for the Olympia. So this off season will be interesting as my first official off season, as a bodybuilder. I suspect I'll probably, get up to about 190 or so. But like my weight right now is what I would do this off season. So
I mean, this is why I think the one thing about female bodybuilding that's so unique is it's the only sport where you'll actually get women to admit their weight. And this is the one, like, I have women who are willingly just like, oh, I weigh this much and this much, and it's like, oh, just try and go out and ask that in general public and see what kind of answers you get. So that's why I find so fascinating is that they're just willing to. But so I'm also a statistician. So I find this fascinating. How many chicken breasts do you think you go through in a week?
maybe 10 or so. Who knows?
Because I have a theory that I've been working on where, like, depending on how many chicken breasts you eat determines like what either if you're like bikini, figure, physique, or bodybuilding. And so I've been making like a map and stuff like that, because that's just my statistician mind where like I have to put things in the categories. So I have found that usually it's like if it's 20 to 25, that's usually like the bodybuilding or the physique, and then if it's like the 10, it's the bikini. So you're an outlier then, I guess. But hey, I love having the outliers because it mixes up the medium. Where I had one person who was like, yeah, I go through like 35, and I was like, and she was like a figure competitor, and I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. But yeah, so that's my little statistician brain at work there.
Yeah, I do a double portion of eggs though. I think that's what, like,
that
one
too.
chicken meal usually lots of eggs though.
I add on eggs to that time too. So yeah, eggs is another big one too. But even for me, like, I ate so many eggs now where like I can't even process them that well now. So like I have to switch them out because I literally just went from eating so many eggs for so long that I just couldn't. But so for me and chicken breasts, it's a funny story where I like them absolutely burnt. Like, not absolutely burnt, but I like them crunchy, because I had one time in college where I accidentally undercooked them just a little bit, and I got really bad food poisoning. So now I literally have to have them where they have to be like orange, basically, It's the orange where it's about to turn black, but it's like it's
Uh,
at that point where you're just like where it's crunchy. So yeah, that's me and chicken breast, where it's an interesting history where even when I'm done with my cardio right now, I'll have like 4 or 5 of them, just smallish ones, waiting for me on the grill. But yeah, it's just the fascinating stuff that goes on to this lifestyle. But the most important part of this lifestyle, which you know it's probably the most important part in just your overall life too, is sleep. I mean, so many people, it's never talked about on social media, and I really think it should be. I mean, it's the most important thing when it comes to recovery. It's the most important thing, just overall. I like to compare it to, if you get a really hard workout in the night before and you get that proper amount of sleep, you wake up feeling like a superhero, basically. I mean, there's almost no better feeling in the world than getting that proper amount of sleep after like a really hard and long day. But I mean, so many people in this day and age struggle with it because of technology and other things. But when you're a bodybuilder, sleep is like to the 90th degree, more important, because let's face it, when you're doing all these cardio sessions and you're dieting down, you need to get your proper amount of sleep. So what does that proper amount of sleep look like for you? And I mean, when you're that dieted down, sleep can be super hard to get. I mean, as much as it would, make people go like, why would it be super hard to get? When you're that tired, people, it's sometimes hard to fall asleep just because you're that tired. Like it's when you get to a certain level of tired, it can sometimes be hard to fall asleep. But what are some tips and tricks that you try to do to try to get that proper amount of sleep?
I schedule everything, and my coach is really big. Drink your water, get your sleep. That's pretty much the two things that he's always talks about. And so yeah, I mean I schedule. I mean I'm a morning person, so I get up very early. I train clients very early in the morning. But I go to bed. I'm in bed. Now people laugh. I'm like, if it's after 8 o'clock, I'm probably asleep. I'm done. But I'm also up. At 2 or 3 in the morning. I schedule naps midday. When I have my breaks from clients and transition between jobs and stuff or getting to the gym. But I schedule about a 90-minute nap. Like I'm all about naps, so I get my naps in midday. So
I
to kind
hate
of help.
I hate her already, everyone, because so like you're going to bed at my 60-year-old parents are going to bed basically around that time, but I work nights, so I'm going to bed, sometimes around like 3 or 4 in the morning. So I always find it funny how, like you said, you're getting up at 2 or 3. Yeah, if we were roommates, that'd be really interesting because you'd be getting up and I'd be going to sleep. But hey, it just shows. And so as you can tell by probably just talking to me for a little while, I'm a hyper person. Naps are one thing. I probably only had probably maybe about a dozen of them in my entire life. I just can't take naps. Like I just, yeah, I know. See, prayers for me, but so what I'll do is I'll literally just lay in my bed right behind me. I'll just have my eyes closed, but I won't fall asleep for like half an hour. I'll just lay there with my eyes, and I mean, it recovers me a little bit, but yeah, I have never. But the thing that I hate about naps, though, the ones that I have had, because during COVID, I've actually had 2 naps, which is like a big deal for me, is that when you do wake up from your nap, just that feeling that you have of like you don't know what time it is, what day it is and stuff, and then you're like, oh my god, and then you look at your watch and you're like, oh, I was only asleep for like an hour, and it feels like you slept like the whole day through. So like that's the one thing that I don't like about it. But yeah, sleep is everyone. Yeah. And also melatonin here, huge game changer for me. So anyone out there who's looking into that. But when it comes to especially bodybuilding, I'd say the number one thing that shocked me more than anything else when I started this podcast is that for so many of these guests, posing is the hardest thing for them. It's harder than your working out, it's harder than your nutrition. I like to compare it now to being a perfect driver, where you can be a great driver, you can never be a perfect driver. You can be a great poser, you can never be a perfect poser. It's always ever evolving. What is your experience with posing been like?
You know what? I'm a student of the sport. I'm always learning. Posing's always changing. Your body's always changing. As you get leaner and leaner, from year to year, as you're building more muscle, your body changes, your posing changes. From the time you start prep, 12 weeks out to the day you hit show, your posing changes. It's interesting though. So like I pose more now in this last year and a half. I've really started to take my posing seriously because it can make or break a show. You can win or lose based on your posing. You need to highlight the good parts and not so much the other parts. So you need to be able to hide your flaws too. I mean, that's all part of posing. It's all part of the thing. But when it comes down to it, posing can make or break, or it can win or lose. And I've learned to embrace it, and it's fun now for me. And like putting the routines together. Initially, I was like, oh, it's a chore, and it's work, and but it's you want to put on a show for the audience. You want to show class, show off your physique. And so like I've learned now, okay, it's fun picking out my music and kind of getting my routines put together. And I work with some really good people to help kind of tweak my posing, just to kind of show off my physique. But it's an art form really. It's enough, yeah, really come around to it.
Well, and also probably the biggest misconception about posing in general is that if you were to take someone from the general public on stage and ask them to pose, they would last probably about 5 or 6 seconds. You have to be on stage and posing for minutes on minutes. Well, how long did it take before you really think that you developed that muscle maturity that you were able to hold that pose? Because let's be honest, the human body is not meant to be in that flexive state for that long a period of time.
Now I remember my pro debut, and the head judge had like, because I was in first call outs, and we were recording it, and it was literally the first call outs. We were up there for 10 minutes. It was 10 minutes of constant
Jeez.
switching us around and switching us around. And it like they had people coming out, and they were like, towels and stuff. And we were sweating. Like they worked us for like 10 minutes of
Ugh.
posing, like nonstop. And my coaches and I was like, we practiced this, and we did. We practiced 1 minute, 2 minute holds in each pose, and learning to control your breathing. And even now, like that's what I've kind of just incorporated now. I do my fasted cardio. I do at least 10 minutes of fasted posing where I'm just holding my mandatories. I just want to hold my mandatories because I need to be able to hold my mandatories on stage when asked to. So yeah, the 10 minutes was probably a record, and I've never had to go that long before. But that was absolutely brutal. It was rough. It was a rough one.
Well, being that you started in figure also, I mean, a question that I love to ask the figure competitors that I have on is like, how hard of a pose was that to flare your lats? Because for so many women, especially, that is the hardest pose to take. And it takes, some people, it takes them months upon months to even, start to get a feel back there. But what was that journey like sort of developing that pose? Because that's the hardest one that we hear of all the time.
Anything with I think back related, like lats, rear lat spread, all that. It's really it's really a connection with the muscles and just kind of learning and tweaking and getting a really good coach. And it's taken me years. Like I look at some of my earlier posing, and it's little tweaks. It's how to flex your quads. It's your big toe and your middle toe. Really, that's what you use to flex your quads. It flex your hamstrings too. So it's when you're looking at it from the rear. So it's kind of learning how what this muscle does to do this, and really learning to make those connections. So it really is learning, and it's fascinating too. It's very interesting to me now. It's like I do this and it does this and it makes me look like this. So getting learning that from my coaches and really kind of getting that understanding of it. And like I said, I record myself every morning. Just holding my mandatories or kind of trying out some different poses and just seeing how they look. And then tweaking them from there too, and sending it out to my coach and saying, hey, how do I need to do this pose? Walk me through it, because it's breaking down the pose and really, it's a whole art form, it's a whole process to it. It really is.
Oh, 100%. And how much easier are things now for you now that you don't have to wear those high heels that you have to wear for figure? See, we get that reaction every time.
Now, granted, I am a total tomboy. I'm tomboy through and through. So like I would that was probably the worst thing, like for
Yeah.
show days. Like I do not want to be the one that falls in heels. So it was always like, well, don't. And I've seen it happen. Oh my, I've seen it happen. And it's just like it never happened to me, but that was like the fear. It was just oh man, yeah. So I was happy to ditch those for women's physique for sure.
I mean, I always said, don't these people go through enough already? You got to make them wear high heels. I mean, it's like, what's wrong? I mean, I just add a checklist of, like what goes into like, look, this stage look. And it's like, yeah. And then you got to add on the high heels to that. It's like, what is wrong with some of these people that are making these judges? But out of your bodybuilding poses now, what is your favorite pose and what is your least favorite pose?
Favorite pose, thigh abdominals, probably my favorite pose. Front double bicep. Um,
Okay, well, everyone, this is the first time that we've ever heard abs and thighs be the favorite pose. That has never been answered on this podcast, and you are going to be like you're going to be like my 300th bodybuilder, like my 400th overall podcast. So, everyone, I say we learn something new every time on the podcast, and we got it here. That is by far our least favorite example. Like I've done a poll, and I think it's like
oh,
80% of the answers are abs and thighs are their least favorite, just because it's for a lot of people it's just such an awkward pose where to make it kind of look like natural and stuff.
uh-huh.
It's just so everyone, we have a first here, abs and thighs for the first. That is actually the first time. So hey, this is awesome that we're actually
That's a
able to finally have that on the podcast.
so,
Yeah. Hey. Hey. I'll remember her now from now on as the abs and thighs girl, basically. Then so hey, that's how. But no, that's awesome, and that's why I love to ask that because like I said, the wide variety of answers and the statistician in me is just absolutely going crazy right now. But when you walk up on that stage, now this is a question that I ask all my guests, whether they be my up and coming bands and musicians or the bodybuilders. For my bands, I always ask what is that feeling like when you get to walk up on stage and perform live in front of hundreds to thousands of people. That also applies to the bodybuilders that I have on. What is that moment like for you when you get to walk up on that stage and show off all that hard work that you've worked months upon months on?
um, it's a nervous energy. Um, I'm someone that struggles with stage fright, like, and I always have for like years. So I used to be like over anxious and be like, and almost dreading getting on stage when the first few years I would compete. And I guess I don't know, like these last few years, I've really just taken my time to be completely prepared for it. and really, mentally be prepared. So I mean, I feel good getting on stage. It's an adrenaline rush now. It's turned into more of an adrenaline rush than you're like, oh my god, oh my god. It's like, no, I've worked hard for this. You really need to see me. So,
What was that moment like when you won your IFBB Pro card? So for everyone out there who's not aware, I mean, for a lot of these competitors, that's the highlight of their career, just because that's the affirmation that all these hard. I mean, we've had some guests where they're just like the luckiest people on the planet, where they win it in like their first or second show, and I was like, okay, that's an outlier. But we also had guests who like, yeah, I've been doing it for like 15 years to get it. But what was that like when you all of a sudden heard your name and you're just like, oh my god, I'm a pro now?
yeah, that was I've been competing like 4 or 5 years. Um, and I turned pro junior nationals in South Carolina, and we did 3 national shows prior year, and I took a seventh, a sixth, and a fifth. So we were like, we're getting there, we're getting there, we're getting there. So this was the first show out the gate for that year, and I started prep maybe 3 months into it. I started prep a lot sooner than I moved, maybe 16 weeks out. It was a really long prep. Like I dieted through Thanksgiving and Christmas for that show. Um, but it's probably the one time I can say that I literally did everything right. I did some meal, I did some cardio. Me and my coaches were just it was just very strategic. I met with my coach, we looked at this, we came up with a new diet, and we just did it. And at one point, it was, 4 weeks out, I was doing 2 hours of cardio. The last 10 days, I was doing 3 hours of cardio. I didn't ask any questions, I just did it. It was very just meticulous. It was a meticulous prep. And there was no other result that was going to happen because I was that dead set on. I remember booking my flight. I did everything over that summer leading up to that show. I'm like, I'm getting this show. We're booking the flight early. We're doing this. We're going. That's it. That was it. So yeah, it was a very. And I remember saying, I remember being on the phone with a client one time. It was like super late, and I still woke up. I was like, 40 minutes of cardio left to do, and it was like 9:30 at night, well past my bedtime. But I got to do my cardio, so it was just you should do it, just get it done, and that was what that prep was. It was just when I won, I was just like, yes, it's like yes, but I did everything right, so it felt amazing. It felt
Yeah, I can't imagine what that feeling must be like. But now another myth and stereotype that I love to bust, and it's my favorite question to ask because so many people do not understand that look that you guys put on stage is not a sustainable look. I mean, so many people, and I like to blame it on shows somewhat like Biggest Loser, where people go on, they lose like 200-300 pounds, and some of them are able to keep it off. Now, I have to mention the majority of them aren't able to keep that weight loss, but I think people watch shows like that and they assume that like, oh yeah, these bodybuilders who work out even harder than probably some of these people on those shows, they must be able to maintain that look 24/7 just because of all the hard work that they put into it. But it's like, no, you don't understand that. I always love the fact that if you were to have like a strength competition on that stage, you would be shocked at some of these results where it's like, oh, if we were to do like a push-up pull-up contest like on the bodybuilding stage, just because people don't understand that you are at your weakest when you're on that stage, just because of all the manipulations that you've done to your body. But what was that experience like when you first realized that like, hey, all this all this great look that I have, I am going to have to put on some weight after the show? What was that like when that first happened, and has it gotten easier for you to accept that fact as your career has gone on?
absolutely definitely easier now. I Yeah, the first few years, first show, I don't know, I gained 20 pounds in 2 days. And I was like, oh my God, what just happened? It's like, of course, so you go out and you eat everything and then you drink everything. Your body's really a sponge and you're holding all this water and you feel awful. And so, of course, you do that for the first couple of shows or years or whatever. And that was kind of, and then just the rebounding weight, the back and forth. And it was definitely a struggle for a few years. Almost made me back away from the sport for a little bit just because it can bother you mentally. It's a mental thing too. It's definitely mental. And so, and then I didn't. I just kind of got better at it and learn over time. You learn your body, and your weight fluctuates. Your weight goes up, and like it's like now. I mean, I'm my heaviest now, but probably my leanest. So it's very interesting how that works. So over the years, I've definitely gotten a lot better with it. I've been able to talk about it more and be more open about my off-season weight. There would be times I didn't want to talk about it or post the off-season pictures. Now I'm like, this is off-season. This is how it has to be. I need to gain more muscle. This is, So
I like to compare it now to being like when you start your own business, you got to spend money to make money. You got to put on weight if you want to put on muscle. I mean, unfortunately, those two
yeah,
just go hand in hand. But another myth that we talked about this actually before we started recording is that, it's gotten better the last 5 years due to, Instagram. But there's still so many women who, the moment they walk into the gym, if they see a dumbbell, they just, it's like seeing a vampire where you're just like, they put the crosses up, they got to go to the treadmill basically. they just have that fear that, if I go and I do like one curl, I'm going to put on 50 pounds of muscle overnight. And like I said, first off, spend my entire life savings to train with you. But did you ever have that fear when you were getting started? And even if you didn't, I mean, being that you work with people now, how do you like to respond to that? Because I bet, if you had a nickel for every time you heard that, you'd probably be like living in a mansion right now.
Uh, I mean, like, so, like, now, I mean, I have most of my clients, they're pretty badass. So the women that I have, they lift.
Mhm.
And if you don't like lifting weights, you don't train with me. I remember telling a lady that she's like, I said, but I don't want to get bulky. No offense or anything. I said,
Yeah.
I did this on purpose. It's purposely done. So no worries. So that's the biggest thing. I'm like, don't even have any idea how hard it would actually be to put that.
That's when you got to mess with them mentally and just say, oh no, I've never touched a weight in my entire life. What are you talking about?
Yeah, people are funny. It's like, okay, yeah, no, not my clients. I don't train them.
Yeah. And it's just unfortunately like you said, it still exists, but it has been getting better, so that's at least a positive part of it. But one thing that I think impacts women so much more positively than men, it impacts men as well, but to women, just to such a higher degree, is that confidence boost that working out gives you. I mean, we have heard so many stories on this podcast of women who have either made life-changing decisions, it's maybe helped them become more assertive, and it's just that one thing that you can take from the gym and use to impact every single aspect of your life. How have you taken the working out from this healthy and fit lifestyle that you've adapted and used to impact every single aspect in your life?
I mean, I think my entire life at this point is it's all kind of fitness related. Everything I do is kind of about bodybuilding, training my clients, and then my clients, they're not necessarily athletes; they're everyday people. It's weight loss for them, or coming back from a rehab injury. But pretty much everything I do at this point, I feel like is fitness related in some way, or some way or form. And yeah, so it's
Yeah, I mean, people don't understand that this is actually that's the reason why they call it a lifestyle. It's literally not just a hobby that you can pick up if you really want to get serious into it. It's a life-changing thing. But one thing that a lot of people struggled with when they first get started, and they still struggle with throughout their journey, is the fact that this is a selfish sport. I mean, you are isolating yourself for a lot of the time, and I even had friends, even though I was never competing, where there were times, oh hey Ryan, you want to come and hang out? It's like, no, I haven't worked out yet. I got to go work out. But
yeah.
how did you deal with that? Knowing that this is a limiting sport, and some friends aren't going to be able to understand that. How did you deal with that throughout your journey?
I mean, you have to be selfish. You just have to be, and I think. And most people that know me, if you know me well, it's pretty much gym and everything else. That's how I schedule things. That's just how I schedule things. So, and I mean, there's been times I haven't gone out, and I'm like, I can't. And the same thing with family. And sometimes you suck it up and you try and go, but I've learned that I'm like, I don't necessarily want to go out with you with a bunch of people drinking, and I'm sober and I can't. I have prep and I got to go to the gym at 5 in the morning. I'm just going to stay home, and my family's gotten better too, because at first they were like, so you're not eating? Well, no, I brought food. You're not going to eat though? Well, no, I can't eat that. And they didn't quite. It's just one meal. It's just one this. Yeah, but your one this sets me back a whole week.
Mhm.
And so, like, people just don't really understand that kind of stuff too. It's like, but yeah, I mean, I just.
No, yeah, and so actually a funny story. How this podcast is named DD on the Spot is because when I was in college, with my working out and stuff, I told my friends, I'd say, look, every weekend I'm gonna have one night where I go out and drink, and the other night I'll just be the sober cab for the night. So that's why designated driver on the spot. That's what I was known as. But
Okay.
so it would usually be Fridays were the nights where I would go drink, so that and I'd be really hungover on Saturday nights, driving people around, so I'll be fine. I only did it Friday nights so that Sunday when football was on, I'd be I wouldn't be hungover or anything like that, so I'd be good to go. So yeah, that's the story there. But yeah, it really is, and some people just don't understand that. But hey, it's a sacrifice that a lot of people they
And
do have.
you make the sacrifice for you. And there's a point where I'm like, you know what? I want to do this show. If I want to be successful, I'm going to have to do this. And like as of now, I mean, I've gotten a lot of support. My family's pretty supportive now. I have a lot of support at home. So yeah, it's good. Definitely, there's some good people around me. So.
And that makes such a big difference. I mean, we have heard stories here about people who their family might not be as accepting of the sport, and then it's just a much harder process. So to have that supporting family really does make a game changer, at least in my opinion. But now we get to the big elephant in the room, the coronavirus, because it's been something that has completely changed the way that we live our lives in more ways than I could ever imagine. I mean, Minnesota, we just locked the gyms down again last Friday, where it's oh my god. So now I gotta work out at home now again. But how has COVID impacted you, especially being in that you're in a profession that, has been impacted probably more than others? You and really the foods industry is really another one that's been impacted as much, but how have you been dealing with this personally?
Um, it's it's been just a very interesting year. We also have twins that were born in the heart of COVID, literally in the heart of
Jeez.
COVID. So just very nervous and just kind of being very mindful of everything and having minimal contact with people. Work for me was shut down for a bit. I mean, it's been very stressful. A lot of shows, of course, were canceled. I'm lucky that we Restaurant, my main sponsor, really stuck by me this year. We managed to get a few shows in. Uh, pretty much whatever shows available, I'm going to do. Um, yeah, so they really helped out significantly, and that was nice. But it is stressful having the kids and stuff, and really want to keep them safe. And the gyms are open now. We're shut down for a while too. Things are kind of hit and miss right now. We're going backwards now. So it's, but my home gym is great. I do have a full commercial gym setup. I was like, clearly we need to go ahead and invest just in case. But yeah, it's been a rough one, but
Which, if I had the money, what I would have done is, as soon as the gyms opened back up and everything, I would have bought out, everything for the cheapest it could be, because I should have known that this would happen again, because we had stories of, people, you're selling a $500 or a $200 weight set for $1,000 during this pandemic because people are willing to buy it. So yeah, it just, what happened there is just so fascinating. And it's just like, I have a grandpa who's a World War II veteran, and I told him, I was like, have you ever experienced anything like this in your life? And he was like in Germany and he fought in all these major battles, and he's like, no, I haven't even experienced anything like this. So it just goes to show you, like, how weird these times really, really are. But yeah, it's so fascinating how, this has all really come to fruition. But have you had any food shortages in Illinois? Like we had some in Minnesota with the meat. Was anything like that happen in your neck of the woods?
No, I mean, I have an extra freezer. Like, I honestly kind of stockpile. I was like, I don't really know what's going on. But no, we haven't had any shortages, thus far. So been able to get, meals in, and can't do anything else. The diet can stay on point. Yeah, it's just trying to stay safe at this point, and not get sick this close to the show. And then with the shows that we did have, and traveling to the shows, just, wanting to be safe with that and make it home safely, and this whole thing. So, but yeah, it's rough. But I mean, just doing the best you can at this point, just trying to stay safe and mindful.
Yeah, I mean, I live in the suburbs, like right outside Minneapolis, like 15 minutes outside Minneapolis. So I was lucky though, where I had a neighbor who's a big deer hunter. So he had like 3 refrigerators full of venison that I just go over whenever I need some. Oh, hey, you want some venison? He was stocked for like 6 or 7 years, basically. Like he's the one person who was like, okay, this guy's gonna last longer than any of us if this
Mhm.
shutdown lasts forever. But yeah, but again, yeah, it just just these trying times. And especially being that like you work in a job where it's really been impacted more than most. I mean, like I have parents that they're able to work at home, and for me, I got furloughed, and I just got furloughed again for another 4 weeks. So it's like, yeah, yay. But uh
Yeah. So I'm like, if I'm not training a client, I'm not being paid. So
yeah.
it's like, so that's where it's like, okay, so what are we going to do? So just trying to find, some other ways to still generate income through that. And it was funny because I was looking at pictures like early on when I first started prep, and it was like my pre-COVID prep pictures. And I was like, God, this was going to be a great prep.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is still a good prep, but it's like, there's definitely a difference there with, the
Yeah.
extra stressors of this year and stuff too. So it's very interesting.
Well, and there's been some bad stories too. Like I had Shannon Seeley on the podcast. I don't know if you know who she is. She's another bodybuilder, and she was talking about how she was on prep for 11 months basically then, because, or like, like 9 months, because she started in January, and then she had a show in October. So like you lose muscle. So that's the one thing that I think was unfortunate about them, just like, obviously you got to make sure that it's safe for everyone, but like sometimes they'd cancel shows like a week out in advance. So it's like you got to give them maybe a little bit more heads up. But yeah, it's just the circumstances that we were put in. But you could also be like my lucky older brother, where he's still making more money on unemployment than he was from his actual job, and I'm just like, God, you are such a lucky SOB. So he's loving life right now. But we'll see. But yeah, it's just an interesting time that we live in. And so the last couple of questions that I like to ask you before we wrap things up is, and this is probably my favorite question to ask, is if we were to talk to you a year from today, where would you like to be at, a year from now in your bodybuilding and your overall life? Now, again, if I would have had you on a podcast a year ago and asked you this question and you would have predicted a global pandemic and all this stuff, I would have bet my entire life savings against it and I would have lost. So it goes to show you, how much this really matters or how much I really know with hindsight. But, and again, we could be talking a year from today and you could see a fire behind me. You could hear gunshots going on in the background. Who knows what the world's going to be like a year from today, where the way things are going. But in an ideal world, where would you like to be at a year from today if we were to talk to you?
Prepping for my next Olympia, taking my kids to watch me win the Olympia. So yeah, that's I feel like that's a real possibility. So
No,
yeah.
Seeing some of her photos, everyone, I do believe that is a certain possibility as well. So yeah, and now the $1 million question is, if someone were to walk up to you and say, we made the decision, you can change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding, and everyone would go along with it, what would be one thing that you would like to see changed?
Change my life.
Yep. See, we saved the hard questions for the end.
I don't know. I don't know, more prize money.
Yeah.
More prize money. More prize money. Yeah, I think that's probably about it.
That's one thing that I hear of a lot too, where it's like, yeah, especially between the disparities between the men and women are ridiculous too, where it's like, come on.
I mean, they still going to be better this year at the Olympia, like they made an announcement. But yeah, that would be probably the one thing. Is just especially as you're in the other divisions, bodybuilding just in general does get more than the other divisions too. But yeah, that would probably be my one thing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's another but one that I hear of too also is that like with any sport, there's going to be human error, especially when it comes to judges. So it's like if they could find a way to make it more balanced, because if you're competing in shows in back-to-back weekends, one show they're like, oh, we want you a little bit more of a harder look, and then another show they may, oh, we might want a little bit more of a softer look on you. So it's like, good luck changing that in a week. So yeah, that's another thing. But yeah, with the prize,
with some of the judging for sure.
With the prize money too.
Certain looks. It's
yeah. The only thing that I have with the prize money, though, is it's like, don't make it too high, because could you imagine what the guests would look like if they announced like $20 million prize money for the winner of the Olympia? You'd have guests that wouldn't even be able to fit through doors. Like, you would literally just be like, I'd be like, okay, you'd have people that like collapse and die on the stage, and then you're like, okay, so don't make it so extreme that like people are like, oh my God, I gotta go, 1,010,000%. But yeah, I mean, the money thing is one thing, absolutely as well. But lastly, especially with this pandemic, I mean, so many people have so much more free time. And one excuse that I bet you hear all the time from clients that you might want to have, even though I know, like you said, you have a lot of badasses with you, but still, you'll probably hear this all the time is, oh, I want to get in shape. I just don't have the time. I just lack the time. I don't have it. And first of all, we all have the same 24 hours out of the day, unless you're Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. I'm pretty sure he made a deal with the devil to get like 27 or 28 hours, because how he's able to stay in shape and do all the stuff that he does, I have no idea. But I mean, it's not the case. But now that everyone has so much more free time, I mean, so many people want to get in shape. I shouldn't even say so many. I'd say everyone wants to get in better shape, but a lot of people just lack that knowledge. So what piece of advice would you give to someone if they just came up to you and said, hey, with all this free time, I want to really get in shape, but I just don't know how to take that first step?
I mean, read. I mean, get a basic. I think the first book I bought was like bodybuilding, like Arnold Schwarzenegger's book, and I think that was what I bought first. I think it was the first like actual bodybuilding book that I had. It's an encyclopedia. It literally gives you everything, and I read it, and you kind of just go through it. And I'll probably say that would be the first thing.
Yeah. Well, I know what I always say too, even though it pains me to say it, go for a walk, because if you have able-bodied legs, that's the easiest thing. And if you just even go for like a half an hour walk or even a 15-minute walk, every day. I mean, it's the easiest thing you can do, and it's it's the best way to get that first foot started. So then when you feel more comfortable going to the gym, you have that background that that's so great. But lastly, now, is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up?
Oh, let's see.
Wings of Strength, obviously, I gotta say, because we've had plenty of their guests on. Everyone go and look at that. It's a huge thing. Go and check that out.
We love them.
Yep.
Yes, Wings of Strength. My wife Kay, my kids, of course. My coaches Shelby, Ladrissa, Kenny. Yeah, all kind of everyone involved in the process.
Kenny Wallach.
Absolutely.
I was gonna say, I don't know. I mean, he has the biggest monopoly on posing that I've ever seen. Like, everyone goes to him, so it's just that's why I always say, if like anyone's ever looking for a posing coach, it's just automatically on my tongue. Kenny Wallach.
He's very meticulous. Like he breaks down a pose so that you understand it. Is the best thing that I could say, and I think he really. And it's in my transition over to bodybuilding. He's like, I can teach you how I want, and this is great. So, but it's very much just breaking down each pose and how, to learn and teach. He really teach you how to flex this and that to produce this. So he's very, very knowledgeable and just breaks things down very well. Very,
Is that what you think differentiates him from other posing coaches? Because I have always had that question in the back of my mind, and I always forget to ask: is like, what makes Kenny Wallach, basically the GOAT when it comes to to posing coaching?
I mean, I've worked with different posing coaches, and everyone has their own style. I like that he literally it's almost becomes like it's hard to explain. He just breaks down,
Yeah,
flex this, not this, do this, not that. But it's he just breaks it down, and it's like, oh, and then he shows you, and you're like, oh, now do it again, and you're like, okay, got it. But it's a learning. It's very much he's teaching you how to pose. He literally teaches you how to pose,
that's
and
just like
so
yeah.
in a way that it makes sense. Yeah.
That's like for me, like the easiest thing for me when I was in school was the teachers that literally just went through things step by step for me instead of saying like, "Oh, solve this problem for me," and I'm not even going to show you like how to even try to do. So yeah, that's that
And
I can really see
really
that. Yeah,
and show your work, and that's pretty much what
yeah,
it is. Show your work and show me how to, and that's exactly what he does.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and he's also tough. He's very like if you're not doing, he's like, what are you doing? So he's very tough at the same time. So
Just like anything, you don't get to be the best by being the nicest. I mean, you're not going to be one of those guys where it's like, oh, it's okay that you haven't posed, in the last few months and everything like that. So, yeah, I mean, but again, Reshanna, we cannot thank you enough for coming on and sharing your story. And everyone, go and give her a follow on her Instagram page. And, buyer beware. You will be inspired to get off that couch and stop eating those Twinkies and, get in shape. But again, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate having me. Thank you so much.
Well, I couldn't think of a better way to end it. Can you give us a front double buy so everyone can be embarrassed and want to go train arms right now? Because that's the one thing I'm training after this. Oh my God, that's just absolutely ridiculous, everyone. Well, now I'm jealous. Now I got to go and start to train arms now after this. But again, you guys, go and give her a follow. And this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.